Mike Schopp here with Adam Krautwurst. The numbers are starting to pile up, so we are almost to summer, officially anyway. In reality, we've been in summer for a couple of weeks up here. And the number of leagues and drafts that people are in, like the guy over here to the left of your screen, they're starting to be well into the double digits. Maybe the triple digits are possible. We'll discuss. It's why we are called the deep end. Adam, what number of leagues qualifies you for deep end status?
Oh, well, okay. So that's interesting. I think it's a dollar value because you can play in like these $5 best balls. If you do 50 of those, that does not count as deep end status. So,
that's the part of the pool where you can sort of touch.
That's right.
But you can breathe. You can sort of stay. Like when you get to be, my kids are 11 and 9, and they're at the point where they can sort of, well, a couple of years ago, they were at the point where they can touch the bottom of the pool and stand up. That's $55 leagues.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that the edge is like all these. I don't know if you've done any underdog drafts yet. The Best Ball Mania, those are really fun, but those are $25. So I think you probably got to do, I don't know, for 40 of those to be deep end status, maybe
$1,000.
Sure. Yeah.
Enough to buy 3 NHL jerseys.
That's right. That's right.
Authentic,
of course.
Yeah. How much does it cost to make a real NHL jersey? $10? They sell them for $300.
And they're really not like, I don't know. I don't mean to offend you if you have a ton of them, but I don't feel like you can't really wear those anywhere. Can you? Like outside of a game, they're kind of not really that attractive.
You wear them to games, and then you wear them to, I don't know, not to work.
Right. There you go.
Depending on your job. But I think maybe after this podcast, we should retire and start making NHL jerseys. I feel like that's also a good idea.
Totally in.
Well, we have a lot of exciting things to talk about. We've been off for a little bit, but we will talk about some drafts that we've been in. Adam and I were in one together on Memorial Day. And so that'll be cool. And right now, so what is the deep end player? Like, what is middle of June, Adam? Is it there's no rest period, right? There's no break. So what are you doing right now? Are you drafting obsessively? Are you reading OTA reports? Are you taking a break?
Yeah, no breaks. I'm taking a break actually right now, this moment, from the football guys drafts, only because it becomes monotonous at this point. Like we've done the same, so I'm 10 football guys drafts deep. And it becomes, the same players going in the same spots, and you're really just looking to get certain exposure to certain players in areas, and it kind of becomes boring. So, and there's a lot of the Sharks are drafting right now, so you're really not getting a lot of EV going drafted in May and June. So, I'm taking a break from those, but I'm doing a lot of these underdogs, a lot of these RT Sports $20 best ball championships to get my fix in, but those are much less cost than the 350 football guy. So no, there's no breaks. I feel like every day there's a piece of news or a piece of information that makes me want to go draft a player or a stack or something to get some exposure to it. So I feel like I'm always got my toes in the water. Well, what about you?
Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, I feel like if you're drafting in June, you are hardcore, and you're probably also exhausted because you've been drafting the whole time because no one else will be drafting in June. As far as that news goes, this will test your point a little bit because it's the Jets.
Yeah.
So Jamison Crowder got a restructured contract from the Jets today. I thought maybe that wouldn't happen, not just because of the money, but because of how they drafted with Mims last year. Different coach, yes, but same GM. And then Elijah Moore this year, plus Corey Davis. Crowder seems, well, he was anyway, way too expensive for what role he was likely to have. And now the money's been reduced, but he's still there. So how do you rank the Jet receivers?
Yeah. I don't understand why he's still there. Like, Jamison Crowder you were speaking to, like, he's a good receiver. And there's talk about, oh well, the he'll be able to make more money next year because the salary cap is going up. But I can't imagine him having a great year this year and upcoming year in an offense where they just drafted a receiver in the second round, I think it was, who is having a great camp and plays the slot. So he took a big pay cut to stay there. I don't know what the deal is there. I feel like he could have gone somewhere else and had a better year, but I do like Crowder, but I think Mims is the odd man out there. I feel like, this new regime didn't draft him. They brought in Corey Davis to play that same kind of role, and Keelan Cole, who has been running with the ones in the offseason. So I think Mims probably last there. And Cole's got a sleeper that I've been taking late. And again, the Jets offense is a receiving core that you can stack late in these best ball leagues for next to nothing. Now they're not a league winning stack, but they've got that high. They have a high floor. One of them's going to get, they're going to be losing most of the year, right? So one of them's going to get you 80 yards and a score every single week, and you can get them for basically free, all of them. So yeah, I really like stacking the Jets. It's not easy to do now because again, you don't know how the receiving core is going to shake out yet. But I think as we get closer and as we get in camp, we'll kind of find that out. But yeah, I think I like Corey Davis as their alpha one, with Mims kind of the odd man out.
I think Mims is where you really have to wonder what they're thinking. Plus, with the Crowder news, but Elijah Moore would be my number one for me. Still, you're always trying to sort of evaluate which way is the wind blowing? How are people talking about these players and these teams? And if you're drafting all the time, like you are, and I aspire to do, and the people who are serious deep end people, like you're drafting all the time, there would be a dip on Moore that would come right after when he sort of peaked, because there was a lot of Elijah Moore hype last week, and there was a sense that Crowder would go. So I feel like Davis is Davis. He's okay, and he'll continue in the league after the year he had in Tennessee, the money he got for the Jets. I think Mims is iffy. I think the most important thing here might be that the GM is seemingly well respected, Douglas.
Yeah.
I think he has a pretty good reputation, and he doesn't draft Elijah Moore to relegate him behind players like Keelan Cole and even Jamison Crowder. So I would still want to be on Moore, and I think, as I alluded to in the beginning, I think there might be a slight opportunity on him. Rookies have been valuable. Like, they've been prosperous.
Yeah.
And, there might also be a sense that that's sort of a once in a while thing, but I feel like that's the trend. I think these guys are so good, and the way the offenses are melding and being more like college offenses, I think Elijah Moore is a perfect example of a player who can beat projections as a rookie. Yes.
And right now he's going in the 11th round in the FFPC. Yeah, I think he's their number one receiver being taken. I can go look here, but cool.
You know what else, Adam? By the way, you know what else?
Yep.
Like, isn't there sort of a feeling that overrides where it's the Jets, where it's just like hashtag it's the Jets?
Yeah.
It won't work out. Wilson is unproven. Wilson was the second pick, but more people thought he was the third or fourth best.
Yeah.
Another potential opportunity.
Yeah. They're both going in the 11th round, Davis and So and I think they like using the receivers out of the slot, and we'll see. Zach Wilson's got a big arm; he can sling it. So that's gonna be interesting to see how that shakes out.
Well, this is just the tip of the iceberg of the names we're going to need to know for the Bare Knuckle Challenge.
Oh, man.
Holy cow. So I had this idea last year. I thought I had thought of something original, but I guess
coined
not.
It? You thought it was coined?
Yeah, I thought I had something original. I didn't have the name. I was calling it the Naked Draft, which
close enough.
The name has its own merits.
Yeah.
But you would not be able to take a phone or any notes into the room. And you would have to draft however many rounds, sort of a standard thing. And then you put your own knowledge and your experience up on the table against everybody else, but you don't have anything to look at. So the Bare Knuckle FFPC event in Vegas, which to make matters worse or more challenging, I guess, will be after the Thursday night opener.
Right.
And holy cow, 28 rounds with just a board, no notes, no phone, no laptop, nothing. I mean, I think I am the man for that, but it's a lot. Like, that is going to be a big challenge, and I can't wait.
Yeah, 60-second timer, right? So
30.
I feel like I just looked it up.
Is it 60? Okay.
It is 60.
I thought it was 30. Okay. Good.
Either way, it's fast. Either way,
right.
it's fast. And it's going to be wild because, we'll have to, so you and I are co-owning the team. It's going to be, figure out who wants to go, who's going to go first. We're only allowed to swap one time.
Yeah.
So who's going to go first? Who's going to go second? How long is the first person going to go? Obviously, because we are the deep end, we're going to reach out to last year's champ and get some tips and pointers from him or her, and figure out, do you just focus on stacks? That way you don't forget the players that you're trying to get. Because how do you focus on guys? Like, what if someone is forgotten about? How many rounds do they fall before someone snags them up? So which
brings us back to the Jets.
Right. That's right. Which brings us back to the Jets, and all the receiving core is not going to be drafted. So, but yeah, so it's going to be a blast. That's right after the Thursday night game. So we'll be all hopped up, we're ready to go.
I have a friend who was out there for FFPC drafts. I'm not sure if this was 4 or 5 years ago, but it was the Kareem Hunt game.
Yes, I was there for that.
And then he went from middling, mid-round rookie to much higher than that when Spencer Ware got hurt in August.
Yep.
To 101.
Yep.
The day after that game against New England. He fumbles on his first play, and then an 80-yard touchdown catch. Kansas City looks amazing. They win at Foxborough, and everybody wanted Kareem Hunt. He did lead the league in rushing, I believe, that year. So at least that's an example of how that Thursday night game can mess with. And that's not just this, but the main event. I mean, you draft the main event. In that example, you drafted in July, and Kareem Hunt is Chuba Hubbard. And then you drafted in late August, and he's third round, and then you drafted in the day after the opener, and he's 101.
Yeah, I remember that game ended. The chatter at the dinner table is like, oh my gosh, where's he going to go? Where's he going to go? So as soon as the game ends, you head over to the draft room because that's where the drafts are literally starting right after the game, and you kind of wait around, and there you go. The 101 was Kareem Hunt. A couple drafts. I don't think he went lower than the third overall pick the rest of the weekend. So
wow.
It was, and you know what? That was one of those times where it was justified. He ended up, you ended up getting, that price. It worked out for you. So yeah, it's going to be super interesting doing the bare knuckle. I'm excited. We'll have a lot of strategy to talk about between now and then.
I'm not sure it's connected, but it is Kansas City. Clyde Edwards-Helaire last year, after having been the first pick, you get into the later drafts, and he was going in the first round. He would be like maybe picks 6 to 8 in most of those drafts. That did not pan out. He's interesting this year. We're going to look at a couple of recent Football Guys Championships drafts, one of which we were both in, and then we'll check out and see what's happening and some strategies, some players here from the boards. So if you want to do that, Adam, on Memorial Day, so I guess I got myself into trouble here, and then maybe you by extension. Memorial Day is my favorite holiday. It is 80 and sunny here in Western New York, almost always. It's a beautiful day. It's the beginning of summer, which is a celebratory occasion around here.
Yep.
The holiday has importance and meaning to it that I like to respect. We sometimes will do a Grand Island town event at the DeGlopper Memorial Statue in the morning and sort of, go do that and just, enjoy that and meet people that way. And then as the day progresses, you're grilling hot dogs and swimming, and there's no sort of Thanksgiving like we have to go to Aunt so-and-so's at 4 and you have to take a shower and you have to take a shower and you have to put a sweater on. And like Thanksgiving is great, but there is sort of a ritual to it in terms of family, I don't want to say obligations, but
Yes.
that sort of thing that isn't there on Memorial Day. Labor Day is great. It's the end of summer. July 4th is fine, but it has a little bit of that other thing and too hot. Anyway, this is not a show about ranking holidays. On Memorial Day, I sensed that sort of freedom and that feeling that I had of like, this is going to be a great day. And I decided to join a football guys draft. Tweeted it, texted you and another friend, Louis Gott, who was on the show recently. Yep. Next thing I know, you're texting me 2 hours later. I'm still in the pool, right? You're texting me, everybody is doing this league.
Yeah.
And so you got all the winners. You got everybody in your Rolodex that you've asked to come on this show. They jumped in here.
Yes. Yeah, it was great. It was, the Guilds was in there. Chasing the Helmet is in here. We've got
Jay and Scott. Yep.
We got you. We got Abib, the back-to-back champ. I forget what team he is, but he's in here too. I think it's We Gonna Win FFPC 17. I think he's team 11 there. So, yeah, the who's who came out for this Memorial Day draft, and it was fun. I mean, and this is the only team. So I'm 10 teams deep. This is my only number one pick.
Mm-hmm.
So of course that was easy. Christian McCaffrey. And it was funny. So I've been listening to, Abib just started Agbatoba just started a podcast called First and 15. You'll have to check that out. It's a high stakes podcast, kind of like ours. And he talks about the kind of the trap of drafting at the one spot, and the trap of having a team that looks like everybody else's team that drafts from the one spot. So again, we're in a league. Yes, it is contained in and of itself with our 12 teams, but also, the goal isn't to win our league, right? The goal is to win the $500,000 because it's the Football Guys Players Championship. And if you've got a team that looks like, 150 or 200 other number one teams that all have McCaffrey, Jefferson, Ridley, then it's hard to separate yourself or differentiate yourself come big money time. But I didn't care. I understood, I know how that works, but I'm not going to get that many number one overall picks. And I wanted to go McCaffrey, and then I wanted to load up on a receiver. So that's what I did, at risk of falling into the trap. And I really loved how my first couple rounds turned out, but we can get back to that. But so where were you, Mike? You were picked.
Well, before we go to my team, I'm 10. But
10. Okay.
What exactly is the trap? How many receivers is it? Because after round 5, you were done for a long time.
Yeah. So the trap is kind of going modified zero RB and going Christian McCaffrey, and then just taking 4 or 5 receivers.
Okay.
Because unless I was to have reached on the ADP there, right? So I took Justin Jefferson because I love him. I think that's the right spot for him. And then I took Calvin Ridley because at the time, there were whispers of Julio going to Seattle. So I would have taken Metcalf. So I took Ridley there because I didn't want to get stuck with having Metcalf and then having Julio there also. So so I took Ridley, and then so if I would have reached and taken maybe like a Terry McLaurin or an Allen Robinson or an Amari Cooper, that way I'm pulling from the other end of the third round, so that my team doesn't look like all the other teams that are going to do the same modified zero RB style. So that's the trap is for, because I can guarantee you. So the cool thing about Fantasy Mojo website too is you can go on there and it's called Stack Finder, and you can type in players from your team and it'll tell you how many other teams in the FFPC Football Guys have those players. So I haven't done it yet, but I'm sure if I type in McCaffrey, Jefferson, Ridley, I'm not the only team. There's going to be probably a dozen or 24 teams already that have that. So, so that's kind of the trap, is taking McCaffrey, then taking 4 receivers at ADP. But the thing that I struggle with is I want to build the team the way that I think it'll be most successful. Some people say, oh, well, you should go McCaffrey and then Swift and Dobbins, because there aren't going to be a lot of people that have that. Well, if I don't like Swift and Dobbins, then I have a hard time doing that just to be contrarian. So that's kind of where I struggle with it.
Well, I think I'm with them.
Yeah.
Because one sort of fundamental, not disagreement, but sort of a divide between us is, with all due respect to what you know and what other people who just grind at this so hard know, is there's still a limit to what you can know.
Sure.
And with every one of these players, especially this early, there is an argument against them, but there's also an argument for them, even in round one. I mean, if you look at the running backs in round one, after Dalvin Cook, maybe, you got a bunch of guys where some people think it could go wrong. I mean, there's a reason to think it could go wrong. It's about some people. It's like new quarterback, Barkley's injury, and so on. So you have Swift, and there's like this sort of Anthony Lynn-driven concern about Swift's workload at this point. And then Dobbins is always like, he's always great, but what about the situation? And I mean, maybe it's better than 50-50 to bet against those guys in those exact draft positions. But I think the more important thing is probably, and I'm no one to tell you this, I mean, you've done many more of these than I have. It seems like the overriding point is positions and how to build it. And, you nuance that with stacks and bye weeks and whatever else matters. And then if you're in the same tier, you're okay after that. And Swift and Dobbins, maybe Dobbins is sort of borderline for where you were. But after Dobbins, I mean, you see that drop off in every draft.
Yes.
Miles Sanders, Jacobs, Montgomery, Carson, those guys, like there's more serious questions about them. So what mattered most to you, I think, was receivers.
Yes.
And to sort of pound that. And then you must have had an eye on Matthew Stafford the whole day.
Yeah, I took him like probably a round or two early because I needed to have him to make it, not to make it work, but to make it work for me, for the kind of the strategy that I was doing there. Ferks or Hurts with Julio going there. So that was a tight end that I really liked. Getting there.
Ferks or Hurts, but Jonnu Smith got hurt today.
Did he?
Yeah, in practice, hamstring.
Oh wow, okay.
We don't know how bad it is. I mean,
Okay.
Henry's also been hurt already, but
right, yeah, Henry stays hurt.
If you don't put the ball on the spot, your receivers are going to get hurt.
That's right. That's right. So a thing that I love doing, and I want to get yours because there's so many different takes on this too, is so I love, and I think we had texted about this a little bit. I love taking a guy like Tony Pollard with Christian McCaffrey or even Dalvin Cook, because to me, if Zeke goes down, Pollard has proven. I think Pollard played 1, maybe 2 games last year without Zeke, and he had like 30 fantasy points. If Zeke goes down, especially late in the season, if McCaffrey's healthy, and now you've got another top 5 running back, possibly, depending on the matchups, that's what helps you kind of win $500,000. What do you think about, I think we've talked about this before, what do you think about taking Tony Pollard when you don't have Zeke as kind of taking a bullet at getting another top 5 running back?
Well, I would never take him if I had Zeke.
Okay.
But I feel like Pollard is probably better than Elliott. That's a PFF point.
Yep.
So no offense, but I mean, Pollard is probably the better player, but Elliott had the high draft status, and then he got the money.
Yep.
So if they had a different coach, if they had an interesting, sort of smart, edgy coach, then I might think Pollard could really play and Elliott could just stand on the sideline. But they don't. They have the sort of the prototype, sort of old thinking kind of coach who would never get to that conclusion. So you're probably right to think that Elliott would have to get hurt for Pollard to step up. But I mean, yeah. Pollard is a great idea. I mean, you're in these middle rounds, or what is that, round 8? That's 8-12.
Yes.
So you're at the point where pretty much everybody by now is iffy. I know you didn't like my third running back at all, in Connor. So the arguments are there for against almost every running back outside of like 8. And Pollard, like A.J. Dillon or Madison or Henderson, you sort of need to have that sort of lucky break. But that is how money gets won. I mean, you and I met through doing that Draft Sharks Invitational podcast, and we talked to Pete Overzet twice. He's like, look, Mike Davis.
Right.
And so that was a huge advantage for him. And, I mean, Pollard is more – Madison was here last year, maybe also Pollard, more obvious in that sort of handcuffy way. than the guys who might eventually make the difference in these things. But I think you're asking me if he's a good pick. I'm fine with Pollard. I have lots of them.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to talk about quick before we move on to your team is, I know when you do, and I have a 0 RB team that I drafted. I have queued up here if we want to talk about it, but later. But the thing about going 0 RB or going modified 0 RB is you really want to. The thing to really do when you do that is to nail the onesie positions. So if you're not going to take a running back for 6 or 7 rounds, you want to take an elite quarterback and or an elite tight end to kind of compensate for that. Because you're not going to take, you really shouldn't take 7 straight receivers because A, you're not maximizing the value there, and B, you're never going to start the top 4 receivers that you have every single week. It's just impossible to get that down every single week where you're going to start those guys. So you want to pop in an elite quarterback or an elite tight end there just to be able to lock down that position. I didn't do that. I wish I would have maybe taken a tight end earlier. I'm trying to look back and see where I possibly could have done that because the tight ends went on the other end of the draft. And this isn't really a true 0 RB or even modified because I took a bunch of them round 6 through 8. But that's the key really is if you go 0 RB, you really want to nail quarterback or tight end because again, with 7 straight receivers, you're not going to get the starting lineup right every single week. So that's the only other thing I probably wish I would have done for this draft. But yeah, go ahead.
I mean, you had that option when you're on the turn. It's tough because you're looking at ADP and you're thinking, let's see, I'm at 701. This is really early for Higbee or Irv Smith, but you kind of like them, and then you have to pick. Do I want to sort of subject myself to picking these guys 10 to 15 spots earlier than they're usually going? I feel like when my draft in Team 10, that was a priority for me with Hawkinson because I would draw Hawkinson. Yeah, I would draw a line. I draw a line closer to sort of Hawkinson up with the top 3 than I would lower. I feel like he is really primed to be among the top 3 tight ends, 3, 4. I think 4 is pretty good, pretty safe. So I was happy for him with him at 310. My mistake is that you see my draft. I went tight end at 3, quarterback at 5, and then I was in too big of a hurry, I think, to double up on those with Jonnu Smith and Brady. But those are both guys that I think are good value, so I couldn't resist.
Yeah, no, I do like Jonnu. Hopefully that hamstring. I have Jonnu in a bunch of drafts too. So, and to your point about Connor, I've actually been coming around on James Conner. I think so his ADP is 810. So I didn't love taking him around early. Like he's not a type of guy that I would reach for, but he could certainly be a rock solid RB2 week in and week out. Like I don't think he's dead. Like I think he probably has some tread left. Their offensive line can't be worse than the Steelers were last year. So, he's certainly their goal line back, although Kyler Murray, you could argue that he's their goal line back. But yeah, James Conner is one of those guys, and I think you can get after kind of the trap backs, like all those backs in the middle rounds that tend to bust. Like I think he's a guy that you can get in the 8th, 9th, 10th round. Like if you go Christian McCaffrey or if you go one running back early and take a bunch of receivers, tight ends, maybe a quarterback, you can come back around and get James Conner along with, a couple other running backs after that, like I don't know, Tony Pollard, Zach Moss, Jamal Williams. You take a bunch of them. And I think Conner, you can plug him in week 1 into your starting lineup as your RB2, knowing that he's going to get some touches, you'll probably get some goal line touches. Because you're going to load up at receiver. You're going to put all your receivers in the flex positions. You're going to have an elite tight end, an elite quarterback. But yeah, I'm starting to come around on James Conner for sure. I just would probably like to take him a little bit later.
Well, I like this pick a lot. I was very upset to see you pan it as you did. Because, I think to Arizona, he's Kenyon Drake.
Yes.
He's somebody that they acquired who had some sort of a reputation in the league, and they sort of sneaked him through, and then they didn't draft anybody over him. And I feel like the right conclusion is that Edmonds is not more than what role he's been playing for Arizona. And I would want to conclude here that those people think that. And so you have Connor, who's been successful, and yes, he was cheap, but I think Arizona could see him the way they saw Drake going into last year. Drake had those, 2 or 3 games the year before after they traded for him, and that was fresh in people's minds. And in Draft Sharks Invitational, I picked him in the middle of round 2.
Yeah.
And that was not even early for Kenyon Drake last year. And it's possible that Connor is the same thing. So that's why I got there, because Arizona is a good offense. We want it to be a little bit different, but they're good. And so I think he's on the field, plenty.
Yeah, and Chase Edmonds, he's 208 pounds. He's 5, he's not big. He could certainly get injured, and and Connor has proven before he can be an all-around back, so it just depends on if people – I think he's a guy that, 2 weeks ago, you could have gotten late 8th round. I think he's going to creep up a little bit, only because people are going to be looking for that rock solid – I don't want to – rock solid might not be the word, but a guy that they can throw into their RB2 spot with 4 receivers, a tight end, a stud tight end, a stud quarterback, a stud running back in the first round, and feel comfy with it while they wait for their late round running backs that they took flyers on to kind of come around.
Sure, especially once they see tonight's show.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Connor just went
flying. That's right. That's what we do. We change ADP on the show. Right.
So this was a very interesting draft. I was happy with how I did under the circumstances with such tough competition. The late round running back plan. Yeah. So, last year we met and I didn't have any idea of what a team structure should look like. I was always going for best available. Didn't matter to me at all how many running backs I should have, wide receivers I should have. Just didn't matter. And so we did those drafts last year, and I had that one draft with the Invitational with Kamara and Drake and sort of built it. Then I saw what happened. I mentioned Mike Davis already. You're talking about those running backs in the bottom half, and it seems like listening to more of the discussion this year, Adam, everybody wants to be in that 0 RB or modified RB space.
Yes.
Like that seems to, it almost is like starting with running backs is contrarian this year. And so if you're going to play that game, which it seems is sort of, it's very trendy at least, then you really need to know the most you can about who the right guys are in, rounds 10 and on, or even 12 and on. Those, you can find backups. You can look up depth charts and find backups, but there are going to be better plays than others among those players.
Yeah, and it's really even about the role that player plays, right? It's not even about like how talented he is or whatever. It's about the role that the running back's going to play on that offense, right? So if I'm going to go heavy receivers early and I need running backs just to fill into my running back spot that are just going to get me points early on in the season, because people forget too, they look at draft boards and they say, 0 RB or modified 0 RB. It's never going to work because your running backs stink or whatever. I prefer to stay away from it in best ball, but in lineup setting leagues, there's fab budget every year. James Robinson, right. Like there's the whole basis of the strategy is to be able to pick up running backs off waivers. So you're super aggressive with your fab budget, or however, what style of league that you play in, to get those running backs to fill in. Like you're not just going to stick with the guys that you have all year. So you want running backs that are going to catch the ball so that you've got a nice floor, a nice 9 or 10 point floor every week. And then you're looking for that running back off waivers that can really catapult your team. So I want to show this draft here that I did kind of as an example of that. So I picked out of the 5 hole here, Mike. This is my eighth team. So this was the draft I did right after ours, with the idea going in that if I was,
I'm sorry, excuse me, your team is draft guy FBG 8, not purple monkey balls or dominate that ass. Is that what you're telling me?
It's not dominate the purple monkey. I didn't even notice that until you said that. No,
I'm frankly disappointed.
it's not dominate that ass or purple monkey balls.
Well, there's still time.
There's still, I can always change
purple
it.
monkey balls 3.
Yep. Blue balls would probably be more my style, but yeah, it would be no, none of those are mine. Yeah, so here I went straight 0 RRB. I went five receivers to start, and it doesn't even really matter. We don't even have to talk about the receivers, but more of the kind of the way you're going to form the team. So I took 5 straight receivers, and then I wanted to get a top quarterback because, again, when you're going to do that, like I could have gone 6, 7, 8 receivers, but I'm never going to get that right. You know what I mean? I'm going to start the wrong receivers every week, and it's just not going to maximize my roster. So I'm going to start 4 every single week. I've got a 5th there for bye weeks, injuries, matchups, whatever. And then you start to get into your elite quarterbacks. I maybe should have popped in a tight end there, but I was just liking the way that the board was falling for the running backs. So you get Trey Sermon, potential number 1 running back there. Zach Moss, potential number 1 running back. Your guy, James Conner, but I got him in the middle of the 9th. Like that's where I love him. So now I've got 3 potential running backs there. And then later on, you get your James White, your pass catchers, your Gio Bernard pass catcher. I really like Gio Bernard this year. I don't know if you've been drafting him or, he goes later on 14th, 15th. Like they brought him in. You know how Tom Brady loved the James White style player. Leonard Fournette isn't some great pass catching receiver. I could see Gio Bernard getting a role there as the 3rd down back and getting, 70 catches. I know it might sound crazy, but that absolutely is in the realm of the possibility. So, Mecole Hardman I got there is my only other receiver that I took as a straight handcuff to Tyreek Hill. So yeah, that's how, like, if I'm going to go 0 RB, that's how I'm going to do it. Get a nice quarterback there to pair up with my Keenan Allen. I wanted Josh Allen earlier instead to pair up with Stephon Diggs, but I'm fine with Herbert. So that to me is how you really want to do a 0 RB build. What do you think, Mike? Do you have what it takes to go 5 straight receivers?
I think I do. I think that some of it is always going to be what's happening around you. And in round 2, like Diggs will often go pick 14 or 15, and you got him at pick 20.
Yeah.
So that's nice. And that sort of like sets you off on that path, I think. I can't believe you picked Connor. I feel so
so betrayed.
Yes. I do like Bernard. I think that all makes sense. And the one thing, like they won the Super Bowl and they have most of the same team, but one of the very few things they did not do well was catch the ball out of the backfield. Yep. And it wasn't for a lack of trying. Like they could not get either of those guys really going as a weapon in the pass game, and also Keyshawn Vaughn. So I think maybe there's a chance Bernard was brought in for that specific role, and he's kind of famously good at it. And he's a veteran, and that works for Brady. So, and for Arians, that's sort of, it's the right, I do think that has potential. You want to remember, and you did, that as you get late in these drafts, you're going to be cutting guys.
Yes.
And when I picked Wayne Gallman, we didn't talk about him, but in the last draft, I mean, that was early. He goes in round 19 here. I think I might have been 14 in my draft. I feel like with San Francisco, there's the Wilson injury, and Gallman was decent for the Giants.
Yep.
So you want to see what happens in weeks 1 or 2. And then if you want to cut him, you can cut him. You're going to have to cut somebody. So if you had a perfect draft and you want to pick someone up, there's an opportunity. It can be really tough to know what to do. I mean, that's a good problem to have. So I like that idea. And I think Breida is interesting too. Even though the Bills, the running backs for efficiency have been not bad, there's still this sense that they're not good at that position. There was a lot of Travis Etienne buzz about Buffalo. And here's Breida, who, if he can stay healthy, he's so fast, and maybe he gives them a thing that they think they need. And so we'll be able to tell right away if he's active, if they're healthy and he's active for the beginning of their season, that could mean something.
Yeah, and I think it also too. So I have Zach Moss. So if Singletary were to go down, now I've got the backfield. But even does that even matter, right? Like if you had Moss and Singletary last year, like who cares, right? Like they're so interesting, and I know you love this because the the Bills, Zach Moss is the presumable starting running back there. Is there a starting running back going later in these fantasy drafts?
I know.
He's and they're one of the highest scoring, most prolific offenses in the NFL. And they don't use their running back, and that's fantastic. We want them to throw. So having Breida and Moss might, if Singletary goes down, still might not matter. But there's an opportunity there, and I know that they want to be more efficient running the ball. They don't necessarily want to run the ball more, which is great news. So to me, it's about each team, and that's why projections. This is kind of off on a tangent, right? Why projections aren't as important as maybe draft strategy in a sense. Like kind of back to Tony Pollard. What do you project that guy for? Nothing. Like he's going to rank down at the bottom of your running back list, but it's about potential. It's about what can he do for your team, So, that's why kind of taking these running backs in the later rounds. Ramondre Stevenson, a guy I've been targeting late as well. He's a guy that news just came out today that he's a better pass catcher than the Patriots thought he would be, and that whole thing about taking the cheapest Patriots running back. You can get him. You can get. A guy I was looking at earlier, but Brian Hill, he's a guy that's in Tennessee, and the word in the street is he's the actual handcuff to Derrick Henry, because he's more of a downhill runner. You can get him undrafted. He went in the 18th round here. So there's so many running backs that if they fit your team build, if you take running backs early in your draft, you don't necessarily need to take pass catching running backs later on, because those high floors don't matter to you because you're not going to start them. Maybe you want to take guys that have a shot at being the number one running back on their team. Like a Gus Edwards, for an example.
Yep.
If you go 2 or 3 running backs earlier, you wait, and then you take Gus Edwards, because if Dobbins goes down, now you've got the number one, and they love Gus Edwards there. So that's just kind of my thoughts on when to take running backs, what type of running backs to take. It all matters really on your team build.
Yeah, sometimes you sort of luck into value from a goal line standpoint, but as more and more quarterbacks can run, and you see so many that are accounting for so many touchdowns, I think that renders that less. Plus, the more passing that's happening, less likely. I don't know who that would be this year. To your sort of category here, I think Devontae Booker is a great name, and it's interesting to see sort of the handcuffs go together here in a best ball draft with Booker and Barkley together. You had Hubbard with McCaffrey on your other one.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't you rather take someone else's, like you did with Pollard in the last draft, and then just sort of, if there's an injury, if you lose McCaffrey, now Mike Davis was very effective last year, so that might be the counterpoint. But if you lose McCaffrey at 101, I don't know, Adam. I feel like as good as Davis was, he wasn't the 101.
Sure.
And so if you have Cook or somebody, and then also last year's Davis or whoever it might be, Booker, if Barkley is not healthy. Booker, he's been a crush of mine for a couple of years and just never really got the chance there. Philip Lindsay happened, and then Melvin Gordon, and Booker has always been, well, he went to the Raiders, but he's always been sort of second fiddle. But I think he could be a player. But that's most running backs. Just the opportunity is what will dictate it.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's hard because I feel like I hate, and I've heard this before, and sometimes I fall into this too. And we had Mike Leone on who talked about this as well. If Christian McCaffrey gets hurt, my team's dead. And I hate, I know I do a million drafts, but I hate the idea of just throwing a team in the dumpster, because when that more pick got hurt, Chuba Hubbard, he's got potential. And I feel like, if he can be an RB2, then maybe I can piece some stuff together, But in reality, probably. But again, if I'm getting Chuba Hubbard in the 13th round, what am I really costing my team, right? So, if you have to go Zeke Pollard in the 1st and the 8th, that's a little bit more expensive. And Pollard is an example of Pollard, maybe one of the few handcuffs that if I have Zeke and I take Pollard's one of the few guys that could do even better than Zeke. I don't think I'm losing anything by Zeke getting hurt if I have Pollard.
No.
So I think that Pollard is an example of a guy that is almost like a kind of a must-have if you have Zeke, I think. But yeah, I think for the most part, you're probably right that handcuffing your own back isn't the way to go. But I just can't stand the Jared Smollett tells me that all the time. Well, if Saquon gets hurt or if Kamara gets hurt, you're probably dead anyways. I just hate giving up on my team like that, but it's probably right.
Well, there's so many names. I mean, we're still only into June here, and there'll be mini camp this week and then training camp to figure out, but it's fun. Like, it's totally on. I mean, you've got drafts happening all the time. There's that FFPC best ball format, the 125.
Yeah.
And so it sounded like the reaction to that was sort of, not that much reaction, not that excited. Glad to have it, but maybe people thought they had enough on their plate. And then it opened up and people have been running to it. Like, it's another way of just getting your fix here in the summer in a best ball format where you don't have to touch it after the draft. So I think it's just sort of a peak time for the industry and for all the different levels and different forms of action you can find here.
Mike, 10 p.m. tonight. There's 2 spots left in the best ball tournament. See, that's the thing is I'm more of a live draft guy. I got to be honest with you, if the best ball tournament was filling as often as the football guys tournament was filling, I would be doing way more of these because I just love the live draft. I feel like you can get more value. People make more mistakes. It's more of a thrill, but they just don't fill as much as the football guys does.
And once they do fill, you have to be ready to go.
Yes, correct. Well, so they have sit and goes, but they also have scheduled ones. So like I said, there's one tonight, 10 p.m. Two spots left. So there is different styles. I have the sit and goes. I got the slow drafts, but I just wish these live ones would fill as quickly as the football guys, but because they're a third of the price.
Right.
So,
right.
But yeah, so it's a nice feature to have. I've been waiting for them to do. A lot of people waiting for them to do a best ball tournament like this for years, and I think maybe next year maybe it'll catch on a little bit more. But I think from the sounds of it, they're doing pretty well. I mean, they've only got 3,800 spots left, and they've got all summer to fill it, so they'll be good.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'm glad to have it. It's one more thing to look at when you're sort of bored, whether that's, noon on a Saturday or 3 a.m. on a Wednesday when you can't sleep. Either way, just something else to do.
That's right.
So, good. All right, Adam, any final thoughts?
No, I think that's it. I love that we're in here talking draft strategy, and we'll do a bunch more of these strategy talks all throughout the summer. I'm excited to do the bare knuckle. We'll have to get last year's winner on, pick their brain. See how they did it.
I didn't want to tell you before. I won last year.
Did you? Well, yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm in with the right guy.
I am so ready for that challenge. That is going to be fun to prepare for. Like, that's the flight.
Yes.
That's the flight. That's a 28 round. Just put the board up on a mock draft site somewhere, and you're not looking at anything. You're just looking out the window.
Yep.
That'll be really fun to test. I've had that idea. I've loved it. I cannot wait to sort of see that through. One more thing I needed to sort of take over my life here is that bare knuckle.
That's right.
So very good. Well, we'll talk more about that in the coming weeks, and hope to see everybody back here next Monday. We'll talk some more deep end strategy, have a guest for you, and try to help you just do your best this year in fantasy football. So for Adam Krautwurst, I'm Mike Schopp. Thanks for watching tonight. See you next week.
See you guys.